What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we are covering Chapter 2 of A Space for the Unbound. This was a very interesting chapter to play, and I'm really excited to talk about here in this video. So, if you guys enjoy this series, want to see more of it, show the video some love, you already know what to do. You don't need me to tell you. And without further ado, let's just jump right into it. We dive back into this game with the flashback of Atma meeting Nirmala, who is some little girl sitting and leaning against what appears to be an old train car. We notice that she's drawing a character, and she states that the character is the Star Princess, a princess who ran away from her home in space, but at the time that's all she had on the character. We then take out this red book we have and write down an outline of the Star Princess character and explain to Nirmala that writing things down is a good way of handling emotions, both positive and negative. We then give her the book when she calls it magical, after introductions are done of course, and tell her to keep writing about the Star Princess. We then wake back up in the classroom just like how we started Chapter 1, only this time Raya is not at her desk. Already this is giving me some sort of Groundhog's Day vibes. I don't know why, but I feel like we are already stuck in some sort of a time loop. That's just the feeling I get from all of this. We're even aware that we were just at the cinema, but now we're sitting at the classroom again. As we start panicking, wondering where Raya went, we're greeted by Admiral. Admiral doesn't know where Raya is either, but decides to help us look for her. As soon as we step outside to start searching for Raya, we're greeted by a group of random thugs who work for Erik, who are looking for trouble. They also leak that Erik has a crush on Raya and is upset that we are dating her and not him. This starts the first fight in the game, but Atma, for some reason, refuses to fight anyone. All he does is just block their punches in an easy minigame format. However, right as they're attacking, the blue power effect thing happens again, and one guy gets frozen in place as Raya turns up telling them to cut it out. The bullies take off, and we ask Raya what happened at the cinema. She explains that there's a greater power from the sky, a transgressor of sorts, and she confirmed this at the cinema when everything went crazy. There's also some weird grammar errors in this game that I'm noticing. Here's an example of one right here. This time. That seems bad. Nice grammar. Anyways, Raya attempts to fight back against the anomaly, but is too weak to do so and ends up collapsing again. Raya then goes off with one of the teachers to rest up in a classroom. Admiral states she knows how to help Raya and has us follow her to Raya Cafe to get a Black Forest Chateau for Raya, as it's her favorite. We ask Admiral how she knows so much about Raya, and Admiral explains that she doesn't know, but ever since Raya put the collar on her, she's been able to understand the world for as it is. Yeah, this is definitely a strange thing to learn here. I wonder what other powers Raya has that we aren't aware of yet. I'm sure they'll slowly be revealed as the game progresses though. And also, how many other cats are serving Raya? We enter the cafe to get the Chateau, but learn that the baker had an argument with the owner and stormed off, but not before trashing all the ingredients. Meaning that we have to do another fetch quest, this time to get all the items that we need to bake a cake. We step outside and find Erik, who catches wind of our plan to make a cake for Raya. He then deploys his goons to stand in our way to prevent us from starting the fetch quest. However, Atma is incapable of fighting for some reason, so we go to an arcade to try to get one of the regulars there to teach us how to fight. When we get there though, he drives off some thieves and goes right back to gaming, trying to get the final boss before teaching us to fight. We do a space dive on him and help him overcome the boss of the game, and work up the courage to stand up to his boss in real life. This also serves as a fighting tutorial. Honestly, it's a pretty decent fight tutorial for a game. I just wish that the game's logic wasn't, hey, I beat a fighting video game, now I know how to throw hands with people in real life. Like, why couldn't we do a fighting tutorial through like a sparring match with the gamer dude in the arcade and have things go that way? I feel like that would make things make much more sense. I mean, we do beat up people in the arcade after the tutorial, so I guess that counts in a way, but I don't know. I then take off one of the items of the bucket list by beating the high score in the Future Fighters game, which happened to be on my very first attempt. It was honestly a pretty fun minigame. After beating the high score, we get another piece of the story and a flashback with us playing this game with Nirmala. The high score initials were RFN, and I believe that's the same initials on the cover of the red book. unless I'm misremembering something. Anyways, nothing real important here, just us agreeing to help Nirmala with her studies. This introduces the question of, where is Nirmala now? Like, we state we're in high school at the time, which was in the last few years at most. So what happened to Nirmala? And why isn't she around anymore? Did she really drown in the river at the beginning of the game? I know that the game will answer this at some point. I just wish that I knew what was going on with everything. This game does a good job so far of setting up questions that we the players ask ourselves. I will give it that. I'm finding myself asking a lot of questions about the lore of this game. So far so good. After the arcade training arc, we go back outside and beat up both of Erik's goons, and then move along to start the fetch quest. However, Admiral points out that Erik has most likely messed with the stock at the general store, and that we'll need to find an alternative way to get the ingredients. So she calls up her underlings, who help us pinpoint the location of the items. It's also briefly mentioned here that Erik has been picking on Raya for years, which would explain why Raya doesn't like him at all. Unfortunately, the fetch quest here is pretty boring and not really challenging or thought-provoking in any way. We literally just go up to some fat kid and do a space dive on him to help him start to eat healthy and to appreciate his mom's cooking, which gives us chocolate. Next is an older gentleman who we do a space dive on to remember when the old cherry tree would produce cherries that him and his brother would pick together. So we pick the cherries in his heart and then bring them out into the real world? Yeah, I have no idea how that makes sense, or even works to begin with, but we have 2 ingredients now. We get the last ingredient that we need by bringing a rooster to some horny hen, and the 2 run off into the sunset together, while their owner is just like, nah, is what it is. We bring the ingredients back to the cafe, but the old man isn't able to make the gâteau as his skills are a little rusty, as he puts it. So we need to track down the baker that stormed off and bring her back to make the cake. What I did not expect, though, was the lengths that Atma would go to in order to bring this lady back to make a cake for him. We track down the old chef who is researching other cooking career paths that interest her at some computer place. We then do a space dive on her and sabotage her career interests in her own heart until she is only left with baking, which then motivates her to leave the computer place and return to work at the cafe and bake us the gâteau. And honestly, that is extremely harsh and a horrible thing to do. But to be fair, I guess when the whole world and space-time is at risk, there really isn't too high of a price to pay. So sacrifices must be made, I guess. While the gâteau is being made, the screen fades to black and we hear Erik saying that he's sorry to Raya and that he did horrible things. We wake up from some dream and receive the Black Forest gâteau from the pastry chef and head out to see Raya. However, as we're attempting to leave, we hear a cat's yelp, only to find Erik and his goons around a skid mark on the street with Admiral at the end of it not moving. It turns out Erik hit the cat as his friends are saying that he should have been more careful. They then put 2 and 2 together and realize that this is the cat that Raya really likes and that they can't let anybody figure out that Erik hit it, which is when we turn up, of course. Erik then plans to give Raya a Black Forest cake to apologize for killing Admiral. So he does the natural thing and steals the cake that I just had made and runs off to find Raya. So Erik knocks out Atma and runs off with the cake. We're then woken up on the street by Marin again, who tells us that there's nothing we can do for Admiral, but we need to go to Raya. We find Raya, but right as we try to explain what happened, Erik turns up with the stolen cake and tries to explain that Admiral's death was an accident, but not before sneaking in that something happened between the 2 of them in the past. I wonder what history those 2 share together. Anyways, Raya learns that Erik killed Admiral and freaks out, as somebody normally would. This leads to a fight with Erik, which is a scripted fight that doesn't even get to finish before Erik states that Raya has to forgive him and that it's killing him inside. Erik's goons then turn up and take Raya away, and the fighting resumes. Things start to get weird again though as Erik starts to glitch out, saying Raya over and over. So we rush him and we do a space dive right into his heart. Inside of Erik's heart, we see Erik in a cage being guarded by weredogs. Erik in the cage is having an argument with himself, and it appears that this caged Erik is the goodness in Erik being locked away, both physically and metaphorically. We decide to help out good Erik escape from the cage, which starts another fetch quest inside of Erik's heart. This fetch quest, though, involves us helping one of the were-dogs bake a cake. That's something I didn't have on the bingo card today. We get the key from him and make our way back to Erik and set him free. Erik states that there is more to being a brave knight than just being strong and brave, and that admitting your mistakes takes bravery. We rush through the locked door and encounter a were-dog that we have to fight as sort of a boss fight. While we're fighting the vile were-dog, the good Erik is trying to convince the were-dog version of himself to let them go, and that things are better this way rather than keeping his kindness locked up, and that he can also talk to Raya and explain things and set things straight with her. We defeat the were-dog, and good Erik and I escape and return to the real world. But oh no, my friends, things are only just beginning here. As we are leaving the space dive of Erik's heart, we end up finding Nirmala. She does some weird spell thing on Erik and calls the giant cat demon thing, apparently named Bosk. Bosk kicks us out of the space dive and back to the real world. Erik then has some weird moment and transforms into a were-dog in real life. Abba points out that Nirmala must have done something to Erik in the space dive to make him a were-dog. And also here I found another fun little typo or grammar error. So here's this for you real quick. It's a were-dog out here. I can't let this to happen. Before Erik can do an attack on us, Raya steps in and splits the were-dog in half, ending the fight right as it was beginning and changing Erik back to his normal form. It is then that Erik finally apologizes to Raya for everything, admitting that he should have been more careful and that everything was all his fault. However, before he can even finish, Raya tells him to shut up and lifts him into the air with her power and kills him by making him explode into nothing, banishing his ass to the Shadow Realm. We then ask Raya where Erik went, and she calmly states that he is dead. She then calmly picks up the cake and starts eating it like nothing happened. Afterwards, Raya then collapses for the 20th time, and the camera pans up to the sky once again, showing it becoming even more cracked. So yeah, final thoughts. Yeah, our girlfriend is definitely insane. Yeah, so chapter 2 sure was an interesting chapter from a lore perspective. Gameplay was, if I'm being honest, tedious and forgettable. Like, I just finished editing the clips for this voiceover, and I've already forgotten what a lot of it was. But I'm here for the story, so I don't really mind the bad gameplay. So what I want to do is just dive right into my theories and lay out what all I'm thinking, because there sure is a lot going through my head. So Nirmala showing up out of nowhere was wild. I always thought that she was just some sort of a dream girl, but with her showing up in Erik's space dive, as well as apparently hanging out with us in the arcade in recent years, makes me think otherwise. Nirmala also drops the super cat thing as Bosk. And now I would like to change my theory from the previous episode. And my new theory is that maybe Nirmala is the Star Princess and that Bosk is the cat that she leaves behind when she dies. I mean, it makes sense, right? Another theory that I have is that we're currently in the epilogue of the original story and that Bosk is the cat that was left behind. I don't really have much to back up this second theory, but it's a guess, and I guess it doesn't really explain Nirmala. But yeah, let's talk about Raya now, though. I still think it's possible that Raya is the Star Princess, and that theory still stands with me, but my original theory of Admiral being her companion from the beginning is gone with Admiral's unfortunate death. And I don't know what to think about it all. What I'm thinking, though, is that Nirmala and Bosk are the enemies of this game. But the question I now have is, are they the Star Princess and her cat? Or is Raya the Star Princess and something else? The cat. I mean, either way, I think that Raya or Nirmala is going to turn out to be the main antagonist of this game. And I'm leaning more towards Nirmala being the antagonist right now. Because I just don't see Raya being the main villain here. Even though, yeah, she definitely is insane. But also, I could see the Nirmala and Bosk thing being like a twist. Like, we're not actually the villains. We're fulfilling the prophecy because it's what's right to do. And Raya is actually the bad one, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't fully buy the theory that Raya is going to be the main villain, but it's a thought in the back of my head for sure. Thank you everybody so much for watching this recap of chapter 2 of A Space for the Unbound. This was such a fun chapter despite the horrible gameplay. The lore is really starting to pick up for me, and I have not played chapter 3 yet, so I am very excited to dive back into this game here live on the channel and see what all happens next. If you'd like to tune in live also and watch me play through this game, feel free to subscribe or check out the live streams. I go live whenever I can, but I always try to on Saturdays. But if you want to make sure you don't miss a live stream or an upload, feel free to subscribe. It's completely free and you can unsub anytime you want. Anyways, that's all I've got. Thank you everybody as always for watching, and until next time, bye for now.